Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Inside Arsenal. I hope you're all well and had a very good day yesterday. Today is a big day. We're going to be talking about full agreement between Arsenal and West Ham for Declan Rice. Finally, that huge club record fee for a British player is about to get over the line. Still a little bit more to do. Medical, that is happening, or going to be happening. And then Declan Rice will finally be confirmed as an Arsenal player, bringing to an end a bit of a saga. Well, I don't know. Can you call it a saga when we're still sort of early in July? I'm not sure. But still, fantastic news for Arsenal. Fantastic news for West Ham as well. I think everyone needed this to be done, and it is now done pretty much. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We've got lots of other stuff to talk about as well. Arsenal signed Alessia Russo from Manchester United, bolstering Jonas Ardavel's attack heading into next season. Fantastic. Huge signing that for Arsenal women ahead of their new WSL season. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Thomas Partey, William Saliba, he's returned to training, which is fantastic news. Arsene Wenger's getting a statue at the Emirates. There's loads and loads of things to talk about. So let's get cracking. But first of all, if I may, and just indulge me a little bit on this one, if you could, I'm just going to bring this up here on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to it on podcast, then what I've just brought up is a screen of my new website, charleswatts.football. This is all part of the new career path that I've chosen, the work I'm going to be doing, the way I'm going to be covering Arsenal from now on. Obviously, going to be really expanding this YouTube channel. That is the plan. But also, I'm a writer. I've always been a writer, and my passion is writing about football and writing about Arsenal. And so my website has now gone up. It's still very much in the early stages. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see a picture of the homepage there. I tweeted it out yesterday. Got really good response yesterday. So thank you very much for everyone who's visited the site in the last 24 hours. There's a few things up there. Of course, it's going to be steadily increasing in terms of the content that's out there as we build up to the new season. And we're still, myself and the web designer, are still sort of putting the finishing touches on it, but it is now live. And any support you can give, then I really do appreciate it. That site is going to allow me to still write about Arsenal, which of course is what I want to do. You're still going to get the same stuff from me, the same sort of coverage you've come to expect from me in terms of writing. If you've followed me at Football London and at Goal, in covering Arsenal in the build-ups to games, match reaction, news stories, transfer stories, analysis, features, that sort of stuff. I'm still going to be doing it, and it's just going to be on my own site now. Instead of writing for someone else, I'm writing for myself and writing for you guys, of course, as well. So yeah, that is now live. If you haven't visited it yet, then please do go and check it out. Like I said, it's still very early stages. The site is very, very much going to grow, but I'm really excited to get it up and running and off the ground. Okay, now let's talk about Declan Rice, shall we? As I said at the start, I don't know if you can quite call this a saga yet because we're still only in July. Not everyone's even returned yet for pre-season training, but it's one that we've all sort of wanted to get over the line. We've wanted it to be done and finalised so that everyone can move on, so that Arsenal can, they basically know they've got their number one target through the door, so West Ham can move on and sign who they're going to sign in terms of replacements, so us as fans can kind of look forward to next season knowing the priority target has come through. And last night, full agreement was reached between Arsenal and West Ham. You see there David Ornstein's tweet. David again breaking that story late last night. Amazing journalist David Ornstein is absolutely fantastic. Breaking that story last night, the agreement has been reached, and now Declan Rice is going to be set for medical. I don't think that medical is going to happen today, but it is going to happen imminently. Whether a full announcement will come from West Ham immediately after that medical is done, so by the end of the week, I don't know. It might take a couple of days yet before we get the official, the official announcement with Rice signing in his first interview and all that stuff. But we are getting there. This is a big, big step. Arsenal have got their man. They've agreed the deal with West Ham. It's going to be over about 2-year period. Arsenal are paying this money, so it's a really big statement from Arsenal. They're shelling out what is going to be a British record fee for a player. For a British player, it's a club record fee, absolutely smashing the £72 million they paid for Nicolas Pepe, and they're going to be doing it over a sort of 2-year period. So, West Ham, that's what they wanted. They're happy. Arsenal would have liked to have staggered the payments over a couple more years, perhaps, but at the end of the day, they've got their player. They've put the finances in place to be able to get this deal done. They're happy to do it over 2 years, and And it's, it's just a fantastic deal. It's brilliant for Arsenal. It's brilliant for Declan Rice, who I can't wait to watch. It's fantastic for Mikel Arteta. Arteta has played a huge part in this deal. Whenever you talk to anyone, honestly, who deals with Mikel, I mean, we see it every day. Well, not every day, but every week when we go in press conferences and we're dealing with him when the microphones and the cameras are turned off. He's a very... when you talk to him, when he talks about football to you, it's really tough not to believe what he's saying and to trust what he's saying. And Martin Odegaard said it in a Players Tribune interview that he did last year. And he said he said exactly the same thing. It's like, it's really difficult not to believe absolutely everything that Mikel Arteta tells you. And I think we're seeing, with these signings, with Declan Rice, he rejected Manchester City to make this move to Arsenal happen. And Mikel Arteta was such a huge part of that, because Declan Rice, after listening to Mikel Arteta, he believes in him. He believed in what he told him, and he wants to be a part of it. And so for Mikel to get this over the line, it was the player he really wanted. He deserves a lot of credit, and the club deserve a lot of credit. The owners, Edu, everyone involved in getting this monumental deal over the line in terms of finances, in terms of the competition they've beaten off to win the race for Declan Rice. I've said it many times, and it really does paint a very vivid picture in terms of where Arsenal are as a club right now and the direction that they're in. That players like Declan Rice, just like players like Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli, are willing to commit their futures to the club. But players like Declan Rice are willing to join the club. It just says a huge amount. A couple of years ago, this would never have happened. Arsenal would never have been able to do this, but they have now, and that shows, the kind of club that they are and the direction they are heading in. And it's the big part of what Mikel Arteta wanted to do this summer. The midfield was such a key priority area that he wanted to address and that he wanted to strengthen. And in Declan Rice, he signed his priority target, the man he thinks can take Arsenal to the next level. And that could well mean the end for this man, potentially. I hope not. I've said it before, I hope not. But as it stands at the moment, Thomas Partey is seeking a little bit of clarity. That's my understanding in terms of where his future is at the moment with Arsenal. He's coming back this week. I don't think he's back yet. He flew back to the UK at the weekend after his holiday. I think he had a couple of extra days off. He will be back at London Colney this week, maybe today, I'm not sure, but he's back at London Colney at some point this week. And when he goes back, he wants to hold talks with Arsenal just to get some clarity. He's seen the speculation. He's seen, all the stories about him potentially going and Arsenal potentially being willing to let him go. And, he kind of wants to know what's happening. So he's going to be seeking a little bit of clarity. He will look to hold talks with Arsenal to find out what is happening. Now, I've seen stories that he's asked to leave. My understanding of that is that it's just not the case. He is absolutely, I've said it before, he wanted to get Arsenal into the Champions League. That's a big reason why he signed for Arsenal from Atletico Madrid. Now that he's done that, he would really like to represent Arsenal in that competition. But he wants to know what the plan is, what the future is for him, how they see it, and whether they are open to letting him go. So, Thomas Partey is just seeking a little bit of clarity, and we're going to have to wait and see what happens with him. Obviously Declan Rice coming in, that's a player who you would expect is going to start ahead of Thomas Partey. You're not going to spend 105 million and then not play Declan Rice. There was a bit of a question when Arsenal's interest was first there in Rice in terms of where perhaps he would play. Would it be in the sort of left-sided number 8 role ahead of Thomas Partey? But with Kai Havertz coming in and looking like he's going to be in that role, you've got to think that that Declan Rice will be first choice in the kind of number 6 in this Arsenal system. Having said that, I still think there's a big part for Thomas Partey to play. And I've said it many times that I don't think he should go. I think he should stay. And I think if you got Thomas Partey and Declan Rice as your 2 holding midfielders, your 2 options to play holding midfielders, you're in a very good position there, in a very, you've got a really strong squad. So we'll wait and see what happens with Thomas Partey. But that is my understanding of the situation, that when he comes back to London Colney, he just wants to have talks with Arsenal to seek a little bit of clarity about his situation. Big news yesterday, really good news yesterday. Arsenal putting out these pictures here. If you're watching on the screen, you can see it. If you're not and you're listening on a podcast, they are pictures, of course, of William Saliba in training yesterday at London Colney. He was doing work in the gym and he was out on the pitch working with the ball, which is fantastic. Takahiro Tomiyasu as well. He is back training. Really, really good news. And it's not just those two, Gabriel Martinelli and Alexander Zinchenko as well. All these players missed the end of last season. We were all hoping they were going to be ready for the start of pre-season, and these images that we saw from training yesterday at London Colney suggests that they will be, and they'll all be ready to travel to Germany next week for the pre-season trip there, where they're going to have a week's long training camp before finishing it off with the game against Nuremberg on Friday. Then they, of course, have the big USA trip where they're going to have games against the All-Stars, United and Barcelona. And having especially Saliba, all of them are really, really important. But seeing Saliba out there training, not just in the gym, not just doing fitness work in the, indoors, but being out on the pitch with a ball, that's a big, big boost. Having Saliba fit and ready for the start of the season, it's absolutely essential to Arsenal starting well. We all know how important he is. We saw that at the end of last season when he missed out. So really good news on Saliba and fantastic news on Martinelli and Zinchenko as well. Okay, I just want to quickly talk about this. Arsene Wenger looks like he is getting a statue. It's going to be unveiled on the 3rd of August, which is the day after the Monaco game in the Emirates Cup, which is quite fitting, obviously, Wenger and his Monaco links. So maybe some of the Monaco club officials will be sticking around for the big unveiling ceremony at the Emirates. We don't know too much about it yet. What is the pose that Arsene's going to be in? Is it going to be in that very, very famous pose in front of the Arsenal away fans? He's standing there with his arms up with Arsene nose sign behind him in front of the away fans at Tottenham after winning the title in 2004 in that red tie of his. Or what about a sort of statue of him holding up the gold Invincibles trophy as well? There's lots of different options. Him in his duffel coat trying to do the zip up, that sort of stuff. Obviously, it's not going to be that, although it'd be pretty funny if it was. But lots of options. I'm delighted that he's getting a statue. The Emirates wouldn't be here really if it wasn't for Arsene Wenger. It was his revolution that he started that took the club up to the next stratosphere in the mid-90s when he arrived after they'd kind of fallen off, not the edge of a cliff, that's a bit harsh, but they were in a bit of a doldrums after George Graham's era had come to a disappointing end after such a brilliant start, and Bruce Rioch had come in and Arsenal just seemed to be lacking a bit of direction. Then Wenger arrived, everything changed, and we're all given the greatest 8 years really of our Arsenal supporting lives. Obviously, it didn't finish very well, which was disappointing for everyone. He should have gone earlier than he did. I think even he will probably admit that now. I think we all know that was the case. But that shouldn't take away from what a legend he is at this football club and what he did for this football club. So I'm really happy to see him having a statue and being honoured in a way that he probably should. Next up, Ian Wright has to get a statue. I think it's awful that he hasn't got a statue yet. I mean, everyone there who's got statues, they deserve it. But Ian Wright absolutely has to get a statue at the Emirates, in my opinion. Probably one with him and David Rocastle would be absolutely ideal. Let me know what you guys think about that. Who should get statues at the Emirates? Who should be the next after Arsene Wenger? Let me know in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. Okay, huge news for Arsenal yesterday with the signing for the women's team of Alessia Russo from Manchester United. Well, she signed as a free transfer. She was, of course, at Manchester United last season, was there for 3 years. Arsenal tried to get her in the January window, couldn't get it done. United rejecting a couple of world record bids for the England international forward, but Arsenal bided their time. She's now out of contract, and Arsenal have got that deal done. Huge deal for the club. Massive boost for Jonas Eideveld in terms of his attacking options with the injuries to Beth Mead and Miedemar last season. Arsenal did well to kind of hang on as long as they did in the title race. Certainly did brilliantly to get as far as they did in the Champions League without so many players. Had so many injuries last season. But the addition here of Alessia Russo is just fantastic news for Arsenal. She said here, if you see the quotes, I'm reading them on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. If not, this is what she had to say about her move. I'm really excited to be here and I can't wait to get going. I can't wait to get stuck in and grow as a player. It's a new challenge and a new environment. I think the growth of the women's game has been incredible, but particularly at a club like Arsenal. The sellout against Wolfsburg at Emirates Stadium last season was fantastic, and I'm just really excited to be part of this club. Jonas then going on. Alessia is one of the best forwards in the world and a significant potential to continue growing and improving. She has a proven track record of scoring goals in the WSL and at international level, and we believe she will be a quality addition to our forward line, so we're all delighted to have brought her to the club. Real excitement about this. If you head over to arsenal.com, you can see all the pictures of Alessia Russo's first day at the club with Edu, with Win, the dog, the chocolate Labrador that Mikel Arteta introduced last season. So yeah, really good news on that, and really exciting times for the Arsenal women's team, and looking forward to seeing how Alessia Russo does next season in her debut season at the club. Just before I answer questions, going back to William Saliba, obviously back training yesterday, fully expected now that he's around, and that this contract announcement will follow pretty swiftly for William Saliba. Don't know exactly when it will come, but I've reported before that that deal has been fully agreed. It's with the lawyers. It's all at that sort of stage now that he's back in town. He's back at the club. I'm fully expecting that announcement to come pretty soon. That William Saliba has signed his new Arsenal contract. Okay, let's get on to a couple of sort of questions or comments that you guys have sent in after yesterday's episode. There's one here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. It's from JD Blotz, by the looks of it. It says, why are journalists who cover Arsenal so conservative, timid when it comes to valuing our own players? 4 years ago, Lille demanded 72 million for Pepe, who at 24 had scored just 22 goals in League One. Why, considering inflation, is it ambitious or hopeful to ask for 50 million for a player who is 2 years younger, played in a worse team, and has just scored the same amount of goals? Surely we would be expecting at least the same, if not more. Thank you very much for your question. Well, that's not a question really. Well, it is a question in a way. Comment as well. That's, of course, in response to mine and Kaya's conversation yesterday in our episode when we were talking about Balogun and Arsenal having a 50 million price tag on Balogun's head. And you're not the only one who has those views. If you see here, we've got quite a few here as well. I've just brought them up on screen. If you're watching by YouTube, a couple of other people on YouTube saying, why question Balogun price tag if Højlund is valued at 60, 70 million when he's only scored 9 goals? I don't get it. Another one saying Charles Balogun is worth 50 million in shirt sales alone. With the World Cup coming up in USA, he's a new poster boy who will earn that back and more if he lives up to expectations. Another one here, Charles, a question for you. Why I don't understand Ari Balogun is when we have comparable in the market that 50 million is unrealistic. Mudryk, handful of games, went for nearly 100 million. Højlund valued the same. Benfica strikers, midfielders valued the same almost yearly. Evan Ferguson valued at a crazy price. And Brighton extracting millions in profit with mid-table results. Why is it different for Arsenal in your opinion? All really good questions and comments. And I'll tell you what, having read them all, I've started to change my opinion on it. Having looked at that, I thought, yeah, you know what? Why can't Arsenal get 50 million for Balogun? I think the Pepe one it's certainly a very valid response. I think the thing is though that Arsenal were the only team who were going to pay £72 million for Nicolas Pepe. No one else would. That's why I joined Arsenal. No one else would go near the valuation that Lille had. Arsenal did, and the person who did that lost his job pretty soon afterwards. And I think it's all very, very obvious that Nicolas Pepe is worth nowhere near £72 million. So I think, yeah, it's a little bit different there. But I absolutely get what you're talking about. You know, what Balogun did last season is fantastic. How young he is. He's playing for a Premier League club. He's, as the other guys said in the comments, he's going to be the poster boy of the World Cup for the USA, providing he stays injury-free and his form doesn't dip. You look at Højlund, who is being valued hugely when he hadn't scored many goals for Atlanta, scored a few for Denmark, not too many for Atlanta, and he's been valued at 60, 70 million. So I get it. Yeah, and the more I read those comments, the more I think, yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Arsenal... maybe 50 million is absolutely a realistic price tag for Follon Balogun, given what he achieved last season. I think the thing for me is just that I keep thinking, and maybe I need to get this out of my head, that he hasn't done it in the Premier League yet. And maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe, like you said, Højlund hasn't done it in the Premier League yet. Yeah, he's still being valued at that sort of money. Serie A is a stronger league than France, but he hasn't scored anywhere near as many goals as Balogun. So, the more I think about it, the more you're probably right. The more I'm wrong to think that 50 million is an unrealistic price tag. Maybe that is what Arsenal should be demanding for him. And yeah, let's see what they get. If Arsenal get 50 million, fantastic, absolutely, brilliant money for him. So we'll just have to wait and see. So yeah, maybe I'm wrong. So I apologise for maybe I'm undervaluing Arsenal's assets, and I need to think a little bit more about it and be set a more ambitious target for what Arsenal should be achieving for their player. Cindy here says, hey Charles, love your content, would love your take on something that's puzzled me in this transfer window. I'm honestly trying to understand why someone like Caicedo would choose Chelsea over Brighton or a late transfer to Arsenal in the best case scenario. Brighton will be Europe this season, Chelsea won't. Brighton is smaller but a very well run club. Chelsea have been a basket case, using your own term, and will probably still stutter as the owners learn and still trip over themselves with a manager who may or may not be successful at their club. Caicedo has a big new contract from Brighton, so his family needs will be met. Is he being romanced by the size history of Chelsea, which is significant, I get it, or is it maybe naive, not that smart, got a lousy agent? Really good, interesting points here raised in that question, Cindy. I think the fact is, I think the sway of Chelsea, the size of Chelsea, yes, they had a terrible season last season. I think they'll certainly won't have a bad season as that next season. And I think Pochettino is a really good appointment, and he's a manager a lot of players want to play for. So I get exactly what you're saying. I think Brighton are an incredibly smartly run club, but I think Brighton have a ceiling, and I don't think Chelsea have that ceiling. I think Chelsea are a mess at the moment, but they don't have a ceiling. If they get things right, they can very, very quickly turn things around and be back competing for the top honours again. I'm not sure Brighton can, and that's not disservice to Brighton, who I think are a brilliantly run club. I think they've got a fantastic manager, fantastic players, but those players will get picked off every single season. It's going to happen with Caicedo. Now, it happened before, Arsenal with White and Trossard. Brighton replace them really, really well, but the players they replace them with, they'll end up getting picked off, and that's just the way of the world, unfortunately, with football. And so I think that players who play for Brighton can see that, and they use it as a bit of a stepping stone. And although Chelsea are not great at the moment and they're in a bit of a mess, I think that long term, those sort of players like Caicedo will look at Chelsea and think, you know what, we can go there and we can turn it around pretty quickly because of the level of investment and because of the quality players who are there. And look, obviously the wage packet matters massively. Brighton are giving him a nice new wage, but they're still not going to give him anything like what he's going to achieve at Chelsea. So I think ultimately, although Brighton at the moment look like the better run club and look well placed to have another good season, I think players still look at it, no matter how poorly Chelsea have done, and think that's a huge club who, with not too many tweaks, will get back competing in the Champions League and competing for the Premier League again. Finally here, one from Goonerization. Said, Holding is your man for the last 10 minutes to close out a game. He's trustworthy for that job. You can't find players happy to do that job anywhere else. That's in response to mine and Kaya's conversation yesterday about Rob Holding and my thoughts that, this is a time for Rob Holding to go. I get what you're saying. I 100% get what you're saying, but I don't think you can necessarily keep a player because you want to throw him on for the last 10 minutes if you go to 3 at the back. And I think Arsenal moving away from that. I think the players that they're going to bring in, they're going to allow them to move away from that. And, I think the way Arsenal are going to try and see out games is going to be very, very different going forward. It's just by strangling the life out of games, by having so much of the ball, so much of the possession that you don't really have to worry about chucking on another centre-back to clear high balls away. And, I'm not sure Rob Holding wants to stay for that anyway, to be that man. He wants to be playing, and he's not going to be playing at Arsenal. So that's why I feel like for all parties, the best move this summer will be to move on and get Holding a decent deal and let him go on and kickstart his career again, because I think he's a very, very good defender, but I just think his time at Arsenal is up. All right, that's it from me. Thank you for watching, for listening to today's episode. Really do appreciate it, as always. If you are watching on YouTube, let me know what you thought about anything we've discussed in the comments below. And as usual, we'll pick some of them to discuss in future episodes. Have a great day, everyone. I'll speak to you very, very soon.